All right, gentlemen, Kasim Aslam is with us today. Married 12 years, two boys, 5 and 7 years old, living in Scottsdale, Arizona. Professionally, he's a marketer. Many of our community members know that he has built 4 businesses, past 7 and 8 figures with 2 successful exits. And he joined Front Row Dads about 2 years ago. And specifically, and more recently, Kasim's been running these business evolution calls within our community that guys can't stop talking about. And one of the things I said to one of our brothers the other day is the reason people love Kasim so much right now, and I could give 10 reasons though, is the way he's showing up to give to everybody in the community. They feel that deeply. And that's one of the many reasons people fall in love with Kasim. We're grateful to have you, buddy. Thank you for being part of Front Row Dads. Thanks for being part of Team Human, and grateful for your time today.
I'm excited to be here, John. Always a pleasure.
Let's jump right into the start of the story, which is your childhood. And I know there's a lot to unpack. And in this type of episode where we're keeping it tight, pick something from your childhood that you can tell us a little bit about so that we get to know the young Kasim.
I was raised by a blind single mother on Social Security disability in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And my mom went blind when I was 12. And so that was just kind of a interesting thing to have to contend with as a kid.
Dude, what emotion did that bring up in you?
Fear.
You know, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you feel in that moment that you had to step up? Did you feel in that moment that, you had to rise to support, to lead?
No question. And I was told as much too. Everybody who encounters you, and I've actually been really cautious about doing this to children, but and I've seen it happen to other people from broken homes. They always tell the firstborn son, "Oh, you're the man of the house now." Yeah. That's a pretty consistent trope. It's like a cliche that you'll hear in movies and stuff. And I heard it at 7 when Pop jumped ship, and then between 7 and 12, my mom's eyesight started to deteriorate. And when she finally went blind, I was the CNI dog.
Mm. Yeah. And what challenges do you think that created for you along the way?
Probably nothing that didn't benefit me, man. I just had to grow up right away.
Yeah.
Just grow right up and do the best I could at doing that at 12. But yeah, it was a pretty swift maturation process.
And what lessons do you think you got in childhood that show up more regularly in your adult life? Are there phrases, mantras, questions, habits that were developed at a young age?
Self-reliance. You just kind of learn like, oh, I can do this myself. Like I can figure this out. And, either it's hacked together or it's not everything follows the rules,
Yeah.
Kids, and this scares me about my boys, children raised in safe environments, 2-parent households, all the money in the world, they color in the lines. And what I like when I see, and I'm still connected loosely to various people from my childhood, but some of those kids, they're rambunctious, they break things, they're not very respectful, they don't follow the rules at all. But part of me looks at it and it's like, man, that's kind of, I think, how it's supposed to be. I think a child should learn some of that. And how do I instill that in my kids in a safe environment?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a real challenge that people can face when they want something better for their kids, but they take away all the obstacles or a good number of the obstacles. It's like when they talk about generational wealth. I heard this said recently that the kids who often create the greatest wealth are the ones of immigrant parents who see their parents work so hard and then they go build. But kids that grow up in great wealth often they've softened, and they haven't developed that hunger and that need to be resilient. And so how do we both provide for our kids and do the things that we want to do now that maybe some of the men in this show have resources, right? Everybody's at different seasons of their lives, but how do we create some, adversity? And as I say that, I'm like, lots of adversity will show up for people naturally. But I do think that there is a difference in being raised in a cushy environment and then being thrown into manhood like you were perhaps at a younger age based on your circumstances.
Yeah, it's hard because some of it really, it just needs to be do or die.
Yeah.
Like when our kids encounter adversity, even if we let them address it, there's a certain lack of cost, like the stakes, there's a net under the tightrope. and the
Well,
stakes just aren't that high. And I think that, that's the cost of wealth, and we'll have to go contend with that.
so speaking of creating some wealth, I know you had sold one of your businesses recently and put a few zeros in the bank. Congrats. I'm very excited for you.
I'm done now.
And to me, that's a great win. I really wanted to recognize you for that, continually recognize you for that, because I think it's worth celebrating a couple times. Talk to me about another win, or any win, or even if it's that win, but just tell us what's great for you right now in this season of life.
That win is interesting because it's the thing I'd been chasing. And I've heard this as a nonstop broken record from other dudes. And they're like, oh yeah, when you get there, it's just not what you think it's going to be. And in my mind, I was like, no, like there's no way. And it 100% true, man. Like just very little changes on a day-to-day basis. The thing that I do love, and maybe the win that I'll offer up, is I don't worry.
Mm-hmm.
Like that feels really good.
Yeah.
I don't worry. And I used to worry about everything all the time. And so a lot of the worries that are tethered to finances are taken completely off of the table. And it's given me this space to kind of like breathe and think. And now I want to know what's next, but I want to know what's next kind of on a grand scale. Like, how am I going to impact the world, and how do I want to be remembered, and how am I going to show up? And I don't have that yet, so I can't offer a win up on this silver platter, but I think the win I want to speak to is just the ability to be in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And not have the pressures of like, how am I going to make the mortgage? How am I going to make payroll? Those are gone. And as long as I don't do anything stupid, they're gone forever, which, that's so freeing.
Yeah, that feels good. Does your family feel that from you as well? Did they get a sense of that security? Are they picking up on that?
What's really sad, man, is my son, Ronan, who's my 5-year-old, he's about to be 6. We told him when I sold the business, we were like, oh, daddy sold the business. And it was a big celebratory moment. And then since then, I've actually been busier than I was supposed to be, but busier than I've been in a long time. And Ronan told my wife I was gone in the afternoon, and Ronan goes, why haven't we seen daddy? He sold his business already. And that was just such a red flag. I'm like, man, I'm doing something wrong. Like, what did it, I got to the finish line. Why didn't I stop and take a breath? And I can justify all of it. Like if you and I sat down and looked at my calendar, I'd be like, bro, I can't not, there's cleanup, and there's reconciliation, and there's transition, and then there's these other things that I'm involved in. But it's still, for my boy, it's like, well, wait a minute, you sold the business, you got busier, I see less of you. So now I'm trying to make a very, very conscious effort to, even if I can't spend quantity time, like really zero in on quality time.
Yeah. First of all, the point is noted. I think it's great that you have awareness around that. And I think that we can all benefit from checking in on our own world there. But I will tell you, I'm laughing too, because I remember this one week where I had taken a ton of time off of work. Ocean and I did, we were everywhere doing everything. I was spending hours and hours with him, just crushing it. And towards the end of the week, he said something to the effect of, you never do anything with me. And I'm like, dude, if that's the bar that you set, we're in trouble, man.
So for how old was he?
This is probably like last year. This is like 7, he's 7 years old. But dude, that comment has shown up several times. I interviewed a guy who sold a business years ago, Precision Nutrition. His name is skipping me right now, but he was on the podcast talking about how he sold and was basically hanging at the house all the time. And his kids had the same experience, that dad never hangs out with us. And he's like, the point is, like, there is in some ways an insatiable appetite for your time and attention, which is,
I also think there's something,
endearing.
and this is where I'm going to cross over into the dark side, John. I think there's something about children seeing dad go out and work. I think, like, on an evolutionary scale, right? You flash all the way back. Kids needed to see dad leave the cave and go hunt. Definitely. And then come back. Like, there was something about that, that ebb and flow, that exercise that prepares young boys and young girls for what's to come, maybe who they're going to be or who they're going to look for.
Yeah. And that's exactly, I think you're hitting on what is very important, which is, just because they ask for more quality time doesn't necessarily mean that giving them more quality time is the thing they need.
Right.
Because there is a moment when, and again, an amount of quality time? Definitely. Should you be there? Sure. Should you show up? 100%. But you can overdo that too, where you don't give them the autonomy, the space. You don't throw them the ball and just say, it's yours. Go play, go figure it out. Like, learn how to be on your own, learn how to be uncomfortable, right? Like that needs to be a part of it as well. So even if they're uncomfortable, bored, or sad, that's not bad inherently. That just is, and it's feedback. And then you get to do what you want with that.
Oh, dude, the best shit I ever did in my entire life happened on the heels of being bored.
Yeah.
All of my favorite memories as a kid started off with us just like nothing to do, way too much time on our hands. And then we got into a little bit of trouble. So I hope my boys, I want to capitalize on boredom where it exists.
Definitely. Yeah. So you mentioned a second ago, maybe the darker side of things. Let's stick there for a second and talk about challenges. What are you facing right now that's perhaps the most difficult part of your life?
Dude, it's so funny because I got this moment where I was like, I'm not going to talk about this. We're going through some marital problems. And that's always been, anytime anybody else has ever said that to me, and I didn't know this until I was going through them myself, but when other people say that to me, there's this subconscious, not at the forefront, but this subconscious voice that says, oh, what'd you do wrong? Like, oh, there's something that you did, or you guys messed up, or you didn't follow the formula, because that could and would never happen to me. And then now that I'm in it, I realize like, oh no, you take these two very, very complex machines and then you force them to run in tandem with each other at 120 miles an hour for 12 years. And there might be some shit that goes, you know what I mean? So it's just very humbling. It's very humbling.
Oh, dude, I feel you. Tatiana and I, 24 hours ago, we posed the question to one another that has there been too much, we'll call it trauma, in our relationship to recover from? Like, when we get triggered, it's usually because of something. So let's say she was off in her life and then did something mean to me, or I was off in my life and did something mean to her. She showed up shitty here, I showed up shitty there. All those are imprints, right? We all have like memory of those things. And as over the years, some of them seem to stack. You're like, oh, you weren't just, an asshole in a moment. You were terrible multiple times. And now I'm starting to see like, maybe that's who you are, right? Yeah. Like there's a stacking process that happens over time. And by the way, I'm not teaching here. I'm more revealing, much for the record. Like, this is not like, there's no teaching going on, ladies and gentlemen. This is me revealing a truth about my relationship too, which is that it's a question of, to what level can people be forgiven? Can you let go of things? Can you move on? Can you overlook someone's imperfections, if we can call them that? And how much of that is you can't look past, and that, by the way, we haven't landed on an answer. It was just brought up as a question for us as a couple that's been going at it for 16 years.
Wow. That, what's funny is it resonates so deeply, John, because that was one of the first. I have a new therapist I'm working with now, it was one of the first things she asked me in our first session. She asked me for my version, my story, right? And then we get to the end, and then she goes, well, is this salvageable? Is it reparable?
Right.
And I loved the accountability she pushed onto me, because part of me wanted to be like, well, you tell me, lady, that's what I'm here. Right. Supposed to fix it. Right. I just show up and I hand you my problems and then you fix it. That's how this works. And instead she just flipped the script on me, and it's not one that I've pushed in front of my wife yet, but I imagine we'll probably get there.
Yeah. It's interesting. When you think about your next step, when you think about, if you are in a challenging place, which, let's just be honest, right? Like, there's got to be 80% of the people listening to this podcast that are experiencing some type of challenge in their marriage. I mean, in some ways, I just think to myself, how could you not? If you're really in a marriage, you're like, I've never met a dude or a woman ever in my life that hasn't had significant challenges in their marriage. And I'm talking about
paying attention.
Epic humans, people that are intelligent, self-aware, grounded, in my mind, epic humans, right? Like, so with that, what do you do? Like, how are you approaching that right now?
I like to do the work. I think that that's where my mind goes. And so I went and I hired 3 therapists. We have my therapist, my wife's therapist, and then a couples therapist, and they work in a pod. They all 3 know each other, so they can talk.
Oh, wow.
So it's not an inexpensive endeavor. And I mean that both in terms of time and money.
Yeah.
But for me, it's always been, and this might actually be part of the problem in my marriage, John, is it's always been like, oh, okay, well, let's go do the work.
Yeah.
And, that served me very well in life. And then in some instances, it's also cost me. So I can't tell you that that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But I buy all the books. I watch all the YouTube videos. I hire the most expensive, best expert I can hire. And I'm like, all right, we're going to do I'm going to check all the boxes. No one's going to get to the end of this road and say, I didn't do every single thing. And there's actually, as I'm saying this, there's a level of petulance in my mind, because I'm not even doing it to fix my marriage. I'm doing it so that I can win. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to get to the end and I'm going to be the performer that actually put in the blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
And I clearly have some healing to do.
Well, and that, by the way, what you just said is one of the reasons that people love you, is that you have some level of awareness. And to my mind, it's significant self-awareness, and then your ability to even articulate it, or willingness to articulate the possibility of like the reasons we do things and the dark side that we might bring to a scenario and our own imperfection and the work that we have to do. So to me, that's the best front row dad, is a guy who is confident and capable and competent, and then at the same time is able to remain open and recognizing his own darkness and like the shitty things that he might do, or maybe they're not even shitty, but they're just like taboo to talk about. Like society might say, it's not a great reason. And you're like, but it's true, but that's part of who we are as humans. You're really great at that, man. I really honor you for that. I'm
going to receive that, John. That's very kind of you. Best compliment.
As you bring this up, I get so excited, Kasim, to think about our marriage pillar that's coming up. And we were talking about who we should have as like a guest on that. I think it's necessary for us to give some love here to front row dad brother, Kelly Flanagan. For anybody who doesn't know Kelly, he's a professional therapist, still has an active practice. And at the same time, he's an author. And he happens to be a front row dad brother. And he even does individual coaching for some men in our community. I know of at least 3 families that work with him. And he is such a great resource. So if somebody was looking for a resource in this department, I would point them to his books, Lovable, True Companions, The Unhiding of Elijah Campbell, 3 books right there that I think are great books that people could take a peek at. He's been really
single-handedly saved a half dozen marriages that I know of. Like his name comes up all the time.
Right? If there's like a tag cloud of like, words that have been spoken most frequently in front row dads, I'll bet you Kelly Flanagan
100%
is the font is 38 point.
Yeah. It's to the point where I'm afraid I kind of don't want to hang out with him. It's like I'm putting on a little extra weight and then knowing there's an FRD that's really good at fitness. And it's like, I don't need to, need to be around you right now, dude. I'm just going to bask in my shame for a moment.
Hey, on that note, man, why you could be a part of so many groups. You have been a part of other groups, but why front row dads?
Oh, I wish I had a succinct answer for you, John, that would just blow people's minds, because that's how I feel. Like it's the most important thing I've done for myself. I'm in 4 masterminds right now. I've been in dozens over the course of my professional and personal career. And this is it, dude. Like what you've built is just blown me away. The quality of the human that's attracted to this, just thematically, if you really think about that, because the other masterminds that I'm in not usually, I think almost always are something very self-serving. It's like, we're going to go get money. We're going to get fit. We're going to go find girls. We're going to, you know what I mean? Like we're going to go do this thing that helps you. And this is, hey, why don't we come together and be better people? Let's be a better father, better husband. And so there's something about that to me, it reminds me of church, like going to church and being surrounded by a bunch of people that wanted to be there to pursue a higher calling. And so, and what's cool about front row dads is you can go as deep and as broad as you want. Like there's all these pillars, and within each pillar, there's like, kind of sub levels of analysis. and you can focus on what you're struggling with or what you just want to empower yourself with. And there's other dudes that are readily available and accessible to you. It's like being in like a fraternity kind of, where you just have all of these bros. And if you wake up today and you're like, you know what, I need to take fitness seriously. Guess what? There's a Telegram thread with 100 dudes that are ready to yell at you if you don't get your daily sweat on. And it's just been so powerful and so helpful. And there's no ulterior motive. Because when I'm in other masterminds, and I'm this way too. I'm not casting aspersions, but it's kind of like, what am I going to get out of you? You know what I mean? What are you going to get out of me? Where's the pari passu here? And with FRD, just show up and give what you got. And if you don't have a lot to give right now, that's cool. Receive for a little bit, because bet money, on a long enough timeline, you're going to be the dude that's on the fat kid side of the teeter totter. And I'm going to be the one that's getting, lifted up by you. So.
Yep. That's well said, man. Yeah. People often ask, like, for me, what makes Front Row Dads different? And I think it's the answer that I've felt about lots of families or any other company, is like, it's the makeup of all the people that are a part of it. That's such a unique, final product. When you put all the ingredients together, you got these 300 dudes. And then that, culturally speaking, is where you get guys showing up to the group and then they say, in fact, somebody said this yesterday on the call. They said, I've been here and I've had deeper, I don't know who said this. I've had deeper conversations with the Front Row Dads than I have still of the men I've known in my life for 10 and 20 years.
Wow.
I still go deeper with Front Row Dads than I have with my longest standing friends in my life. And a lot of that, I think, is because of the intent behind the community. Like, people, when they eventually say yes to us, they're at a point in their life when they're like, this is a priority. This is what I'm going to talk about. I'm ready to be vulnerable. I'm ready to be courageous. I'm ready to support others. I'm ready to ask for support for myself. And like, that type of moment in someone's life when they say yes, it's like, and everybody has said that, gives way for a lot of great conversation.
It's fertile ground. And the precedent is set when you land here too, because you can be in that space and then join a community that doesn't necessarily serve or support that space. But instead you come in here and it's like, oh, you're actually going to get stretched a little bit farther. I know you thought you were ready to be vulnerable, but let me show you what that means, bro. Why don't you, yeah.
I think about Front Row Dad Live when you say that. I'm like, I think a lot of men
that was
were
the
like,
image in my mind. It was like, oh, what was
we're going there
up on stage and we're all about to just strip naked. And it's going to get real fast.
Dude, that's something else, man. That was something else. All right, man, here's how we're going to wrap. The thing about our community, and I'm saying this to everybody listening, especially those guys that might be new, is we're family men with businesses, not businessmen with families. And that means we do put we want to put our families first. We want our calendars to reflect that, and still love business. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with loving to connect with your brothers and build something epic and be a creator. Nothing wrong. We're not trying to make the business the villain. I don't even think selling and doing nothing is the answer. In fact, most people that have sold and done nothing in my life, that is not an example. They're not the happiest people. They are not the most fulfilled. They're not the healthiest people that I've seen. So ones that always have a purpose and a mission. We need that as men, I believe. So even though you are not worried about money at this point, which is fantastic, professionally speaking, or as a marketer, how do you want to deploy your talents and skills right now professionally? How do you want to continue to connect, to serve right now? So if guys are like, what's Kasim up to, man? What would you say?
I've been meditating on this a lot, so I actually have an answer ready. Yeah. I want to employ 1,000 single mothers in emerging nations. The thing that occurs to me, I built the business that I just sold. I have 100 employees around the world, and they're the best humans I've ever encountered. And so I created this system for identifying talent. And then I went abroad because I couldn't afford to hire peak talent in the States. I can't compete with Amazon and Google and Facebook and Apple. And so I end up finding peak talent internationally, and it's a totally untapped resource. So you take that idea and you put it on a shelf. I was also raised by a blind single mother, but I was raised by a blind single mother in a country that has a really strong social safety net. I say we were welfare babies, but that's a positive, not a negative. Like, we were cared for. There was a roof over our head and there was food on our plate. And that doesn't happen if you're in Bangladesh. you know what I mean? Or most of Latin America. And so I think to myself, like, what's the biggest impact I can make that's connected to my roots? And I think if I go and I take a single mom and I give her the ability to work from home in her own time and pay her more than she could make anywhere else, I think I can change the world. And the number 1,000 just feels accessible, but ambitious. And I hope I get to 10,000. And to be honest with you, here's the other thing. This isn't a nonprofit. I'm not doing it altruistically. I am going to make a ton of money with the idea that I have in building this mechanism that finds these people and then employs them. And I want to employ them in environments that I think they will also serve. So it ends up being a dual positive. It's like a force multiplier, where I take this phenomenal resource that I found, and then I take these small businesses that can't find phenomenal resources, and I connect them, and then bam, like you take a single mom in, whatever, Venezuela, who's an awesome EA, and then you go hand her to a dad here who's trying to grow his business, and then we teach him how to use an EA, and you connect those two. She's making a ton of money. He's got a bunch of extra time, and it just feels like 1 + 1 is 1,000 there.
Yeah, man. Do you know what's so cool is, I mean, we didn't plan this at all, but your opening story about your childhood and your closing story about your purpose is one beautiful loop here that has just been connected. And I'm so grateful that it kind of wrapped up this way. Kasim, if there were resources available to you to build this, if there are people that you're trying to meet, what do you need right now? Do you just need space and time to think about it? Do you need to talk with somebody? Do you need any support to grow this business at this stage, like in the next 30, 60, 90 days?
I might just honestly need a brainstorming buddy at some point.
Yeah.
I need a noodle on how I execute. The state and nature of AI is what's giving me pause, because I don't want to take a bunch of these women and train them to do a task that AI replaces. And so part of me feels like it's a waiting game. And then on top of that, maybe what I'm doing is I'm teaching them to use AI. Because imagine an army of VAs that actually know how to use all this AI technology that the rest of us are confused by. So I think that I'm stumbling upon this at a very interesting time. And I don't want to be so early that the model that I build is built into forced obsolescence. So I'd love to talk to somebody about what the long-term labor market looks like for a virtual resource. And somebody with maybe believable, with the vision that would be necessary to kind of speak to that with authority. Because whatever it is that we train these gals on, I mean, remember, they're not coming as skilled resources. They're going to know the internet and hopefully be motivated. And then we gotta train them from the ground up. And so you can't train them on things like graphic design or video editing, because that's gone. Content creation is gone. So what is it that we're going to teach them to do that becomes valuable on a long enough timeline, given that we just computerized intelligence?
Well, an invite to all the Front Row Dad brothers out there that have direct access to you, that have your contact information and can reach out. Guys, if you can support Kasim in this, either with a question or an introduction or a resource, then I'm just going to make mention. Let's give to Kasim. Yeah, let's support this mission. I love that, Kasim. I think that's a beautiful vision. I want to be part of it. I was thinking earlier today, I was like, I want more shoot the shit time with Kasim. Like, I want to just be driving down the road and just jump on the phone and see where the conversation takes us.
You be careful what you say, John. I'll move to Austin to hang out with you. Like, I do not care.
Oh man. Thank you for today, brother. I really appreciate you, love you. And I think it's a good time to wrap.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me, man. Thanks, John.